right. Okay. How are you? Don't want to get in the way.
No, you're good. Good deal. Okay. All right, everybody, welcome. Today, I'm just gonna start right off with making an introduction. We have a guest speaker today, all the way from the nation of Hawaii, and our guest speaker is very special to my heart. He inspired me to be where I am today. And it's funny because when I went online to kind of look at a bio for him so I could do a proper introduction, I came across a video of a discussion that he gave regarding one of his heroes and some of the men he looked up to, mentors that he never met. The first one is his dad, Uncle Charlie Kalama, who to me is just, man, the jack of all trades. Boat builder, musician, just an amazing human being. And the other is Keku Haupio. For those of you that don't know who Keku Haupio is, he was King Kamehameha, the ali'i that united all the Hawaiian Islands under one rule. He was Kamehameha's kahu, or his teacher, his mentor, but most importantly, his protector, his bodyguard. So there's a lot of history there, good story about Keku Haupio and the young ali'is. But with that being said, my earliest memories of Uncle Kamoa are him at Kailua Beach Park, paddle in hand, on his way to practice or returning from practice. I'm talking about my earliest memories. And so, without further ado, let me introduce Uncle Kamoa. He grew up with 11 brothers and sisters on the beautiful playground of Kailua Beach and learned to swim, dive for fish, and paddle as a child. He went to Kailua High School and on to the universities in Oregon and Washington. He started as a junior executive at First Hawaiian Bank. He worked his way up and became a senior executive. He was appointed Kamehameha School's Bishop Estate trustee and is now an executive at the Weinberg Foundation. So my experience with Uncle Kamoa, back in 2005, I started escorting, driving escort boat for those guys, for him and his crew. And I did that in Hawaii from 2005 until 2011 when I moved to LA. When I got to LA, I escorted him and his crew to Catalina Crossing from 11 until 15 when I started paddling here at Hano Hano. Over those years, you know, I escorted them during the Pa'aiono Challenge, which is a Molokai to Oahu run. It's an iron run, and I think his crew at the time, I think they were 55, and that's a gnarly run, guys. And I already had respect for him and his crew, but I gained a great deal of respect watching them compete in that race. I also escorted them Molokai Hoi, the Dukes race, the Aiao race, all these long distance races in Hawaii. Was the relay, the list goes on. I can't remember how many times I've followed this gentleman. And I tell you what, I got to see Uncle Kamoa's leadership up front. You know, just the way he talked to his crew, the way his crew, you know, the way they all jived together and how they troubleshooted, how they responded when things were going well, how they responded when things went bad, right? And you know, you get to learn a lot about somebody when you follow them for 5 hours across the Molokai Channel. You get to see what lines they pick, how they surf, how they negotiate different swells, different wind. So I have a tremendous respect for Uncle Kamoa and his paddling. In addition to all of his accomplishments as a businessman and a leader in Hawaii, I'm gonna let him share his story about paddling. And you know, he's gonna open it up for a few questions after we're done. So, Uncle Kamoa, if you mind coming up.
It's funny to have you guys all standing up. But no, I'd just rather have you folks be relaxed. Just a bit embarrassing, to tell you the truth, but what can I say? Paddling's been fun for me. I've been paddling for a few years now. I've crossed the channel 60 times. I've done 43 Molokai Channel races. I raced in Tahiti, New Zealand, Australia, and all that other stuff. But one of my most prized races has always been this Catalina Challenge. My granduncle, my Uncle Noah, was my grandfather's youngest brother, and my family was small relative to my Uncle Noah's family. He had 20 siblings. So my grandfather was his older brother. So you have a Noah Kalama Invitational here in 1959. He brought a crew here with Toots Minville, and they raced. And you guys just did a race, the Whitey?
Oh, no, not yet. That's
No, that's coming up. But Whitey raced in that crew against the white team at that time. But I've always been influenced by canoe paddling, and fortunately for me is my Anite sister is Suzanne over here. Every year we've been able to use the canoes and stuff. And Tony and I actually raced together in a Molokai Channel race with Team California the early years. And so, yeah, paddling's been good. I kind of talked about a whole number of things. I'm not sure. I can tell you about, for me, my first distance races when I was 13. Like I said, I've done 43 Molokai Channels. We started the kayak race from Molokai to Oahu. We started that whole one-man association. Grant Kinney, an Australian, came over in the early years after he had won in the Olympics. His dad brought it over, set us up with kayaks and everything. We started the surf ski circuit there, and then K1 paddling became big. Billy Whitford and I have been friends since kids. My uncle actually brought them to Hawaii when he was 18 to race in one of our races. He raced with one of my cousins that was there. I've just had the opportunity of being around real good paddlers, good coaches, and things like that. I'll just be my normal self. I watched you folks go off. I was really impressed. You know, Ty thinks you folks all walk on water. I just tell you, he won't never tell you that himself. But just the way he was describing the work that you folks do and your backgrounds. I've always been awed by dragon boat racers. I've never had the opportunity to paddle a dragon boat, but I know the degree of intensity necessary is just really critical. And a lot of the technique and everything that is portable to canoe paddling. So the technique part of it, we can talk about that a bit if you want to. But my canoe paddling is just the interest in paddling and really being worried about that person in your crew that's not quite prepared, and taking it upon yourself to be the individual to really be the leg on their stool to make sure they're motivated and you continue to encourage them. Paddling's basic. It's all technique, shape, and in teamwork, paddling together. You're only as strong as your weakest link. You've heard that. The individual that Ty talked about, Keiko Alpio, why I selected that guy and when I was being interviewed. I put on the Sony Open. I put on a Polynesian football game, the high school version of the Under Armour game that's put on for high school kids. We do a bunch of those types of things. But the reason why I bring up Keiko Alpio is, everything you folks you're disciplined in what you do, and it's just all discipline focused on technique. Keiko Alpio was an individual that was you folks sit down better, if you don't mind. Yeah, Keiko Alpio was an individual that, as Ty spoke about Kamehameha, he was Kamehameha's protector, and at the age of 21, he was basically the best Hawaiian martial artist, period. No one in Hawaii would challenge this guy. And to give you an idea, in order for, humbly I say I was trained in Lua also, this Hawaiian martial art, but we never had to go through the graduation ceremony that he did. His graduation ceremony was they jump into the water and actually have to, with a shark, and actually have to overpower a shark. Yeah, and my graduation was just a regular technique thing, so, but it was, what was really impressive about the guy was just his dedication to discipline and technique, and because of his huge responsibility of caring for this king, the one individual that was able to unite all the islands, but he was his protector, and he died at the age of 88 near the City of Refuge. So he's always been someone that I've looked up to just because of that part of it, the discipline and the commitment that he had, understanding the responsibility that he had to this individual to protect the community. And so that's always been a motivation of mine. My life work that I get to do is just basically the foundation that he spoke of, Weinberg Foundation. Basically, we give away about $135 million a year worldwide, but it's an individual that I was the individual's banker that set aside all of his money for the poor. So I do housing for elderly and people that have mental disadvantages all over the country. But I get to paddle. That's the other side of it. So again, caring about people. Canoe paddling. Like I said, I did my first distance race when we were 13. There were 7 crews. I was in the 7th crew. But neat enough, we did a race from Kailua to Waikiki, which is about a 28-mile race around different points. It just happened that our club couldn't afford covers for everyone, so we went without a cover. And so the boats in front of us all had covers, but by the time they got through the first part of the bay, they had all gone down several escort boats went down. In those days, small craft warnings never caused the race to be set aside. So we, as young kids, 13, we were so light in our canoe that we took in very little water, and we basically made it all the way around to Waikiki. We got in. I always would tell the paddlers, let's get in when the flowers are still fresh, because that first year we got in, there was no one on the beach, but it gave us the fortitude to go ahead and keep on learning how to paddle. We had good mentors and coaches that were out there. And one thing that I've seen, I've been, years ago, Billy Whitford brought K1 paddling to Hawaii. So all of us got into it. And for me at the later age, and everybody was trying to make the Olympic team and everything. Johnny Pokea was paddling for me. He went there, he was doing terrific. He did terrific. He hurt his arm, so he got taken out. John's dad is a mentor to all of us, built canoes in Hawaii and everything. But we started the whole K1 piece, and it really influenced the training techniques that were used. Interval training, all that stuff was all brought over, but they had an Olympic coach, Podgorski, that came over and basically took the paddling stroke and aligned it with C1 stroke, and he did it at that time. This is early stages, like I say 35, 40 years ago. And he pointed out to me too, is just the basic technique and the pressure, how you utilize your arms, your legs, your body. We're very portable, like I mentioned earlier in my comments. So you just try and look at each one of the sports that you do. They're just basic mechanics that apply across the board. When you look at canoe paddling. But my point there is I'm constantly looking for different ways to improve. Every day is a learning experience when we go out there. We do, and because of the K1 technique and everything that Billy had introduced us to, and our Hawaii team did exceptionally well. The first year we went to nationals, we won the team nationals. We had 2 people make the Olympic team, but what was really beneficial to canoe paddling in Hawaii was just the introduction of science. Because we were one of those crews that would basically paddle for hours every day. The weekends, you just come in and to put weights in the boat, we'd put cinder block in the middle, fill burlap bags full of sand, and we'd paddle miles. And it was every day the same thing, but no real structure to the training. And with the introduction of some of the Olympic coaches and giving us ideas, it really helped us refine it to where we let our bodies rest, and nutrition the whole bit as we went back through. So that's kept us moving along, through the sport, but constantly looking for different ways to. I get workouts from Australia sent up to me. Australia has terrific athletes, down there racing, and we've gone down there a number of years to race. But you're just trying to draw it from all the sup paddlers, the surf ski guys that are out there. I learned a lot about surfing in the ocean from Oscar Chalupski. The first year that he came over to Hawaii to race in surf skis, we all thought we were hot, really good. Johnny was doing well, I was doing well, this guy Marshall Rosa, a bunch of people. So we do a race off Hawaii Kayak, this one area. We're going around these rocky points. We wonder who this guy is. He comes in and he just takes off and he goes out to sea toward the channel. We say, oh, he's done, So we get around, we go about another 2-3 miles. He pops back to us and he says, hey mate, where am I supposed to go? And it was the last that we saw of Oscar. So he took off, and the race we did that day was about maybe 18 miles. We had to go around a bunch of islands. And we came in and everybody thought this is just a fluke. Well, the next week we found out it was not a fluke. He just wiped everyone out. But what he taught us how to surf on a surf ski. And he'd come over every year. And so you constantly look for people that can help improve what you do, and not be complacent about it. And so even as I was watching you folks paddle out from here the other day, I'm just always looking, watching, because there's always something there for me to grab on. And then as I get to know the individuals more, I try and understand, what is it that they do to get themselves ready for the canoe, because the time in the canoe is just limited. All your work's done outside of the canoe. You all know it. You folks have been doing different types of training. For me, my background, I've run marathons. I've done a whole number of things, but I paddle as much as I possibly can. This is the longest break I've had away from canoe paddling, and that's what's kind of, I'm ready to get back into it. But our association has, because of the pandemic, has caused us not to be able to go on the water as a team. So, and Tony and Suzanne have come over, Ty's seen it. Every Saturday I'll have maybe 60, 70 people. Basically it's a women's day, supposedly. And we'll come out there and I'll do different courses. We'll go out 6-7 miles. I try and teach them about tide and current. We'll surf in, and so we do different things, but I'll basically over the season, I'll just trying to build a base so that by the time we get into our distance season, they can jump into a race. Our sprint season is really, it is kind of crazy. Our sprint season, you train for hours to do a 4-minute race. but it's a big deal. It's a big deal to win that 4-minute race or an 8-minute race, you know, if it's that long. It's
just to clarify, you got 70 people on one man's.
Oh, 70 people on one man's.
On one man's on women's
Yeah.
on women's night.
On women's night, and then on Sunday, then people come down there, and I just do the workouts. You know, we're gonna do it. You know, depends on the tide and the current that day, and we go at it. And so, it's the most inexpensive racing season that you can have. You know, just show up. But the neat thing is you've got just the best of the best out there, and you're learning constantly. So every so often we'll have ski paddlers want to come out, and they realize that many of the OC1 paddlers go much faster than they do because of the balance that you have and a number of different things, and just the being acclimated to the water that we have out there. And it's like Ty was talking about the other day, and with Suzanne and Tony before, you've got interesting water here. You know, no two places are the same. There's a gentleman in Hawaii that he's the dean of steering. This guy, Nappy Napoleon, right? I took him to Australia with me to race, and the Australian tides are 18 to 20 foot difference. We raced off the Whitsunday Islands, Hamilton Island, and he told him, Uncle Nap, you gotta think different here. And and somebody that experienced, you know, you realize that you've got things to learn. And he told me, I never realized this. The tidal shifts just cause huge changes to where we would normally head in against the rocks all the time. Sometimes that can be the worst thing you do. Seeing really calm water, not realizing that what's going on below, or really understanding the tide. So it's really interesting. But every place you go to, I did races in New Zealand, in Takapuna, and it's interesting. The water there, and the wind is the gusts of wind. How do you use that to go through? But you constantly go to the locals, train with them, watch what they do, ask questions. And most places I've gone to, I would say all the places that I've gone to, people have been very open about that. Probably one of the more challenging places is when you go to Tahiti and you race, because they're very, every village and the group is they're really competitive. So I know my friend Gerard comes here all the time to help with people, and he's been really helpful. But over the years, it's interesting to watch the group. In the early years when the Tahitians came, you know, in Molokai, the Hawaiians were winning everything, right? And then they decided to extend this race. So we went from Kanakakai, which is added another 10 miles or something to it, and it was Tahitians, us, Tahitians, you know, and then the whole world shifted. Okay, we're gonna have to start learning the paddle. So not only did the Tahitians impact the training, but their paddle was different. They're using a teardrop blade, so they really influence everything. And then a crew from California went down to Hamilton Island, and then they wiped everybody out that one year. I'm not sure who was in that crew, if Dennis took them down there. But then they did that, and then a crew from Chicago, right? Downriver paddlers came in with the T-top. So in that year in the channel, we're all racing across the channel, and we see these guys in a borrowed, we don't even know who they are, in a borrowed outrigger boat, red and white, with these tan shirts. Never forget this. Kaupua, who Tony was affiliated with over in Hawaii, should have won that race that year. Masepa in that group, right? Jerome. Yeah. They should have won that race that year, because they took off from us, from everybody, and they were gone. I mean, they're like 1.5 miles, 2 miles ahead of everyone. And then they went on a course that was, and Molokai is just this big, expansive place that you got to go through. And so we're racing, we're trying to keep on my course that I'm on. I went up higher than they did. And then we saw this team with, you know, these guys paddling with this T-top, and just like life was easy. And so we crossed them, and then they took off. They went down south. And it was us, the Tahitians, they were there. We got inside of Kaupua, and you want to have a depressing feeling. We're going inside, we get into this place, maybe we've got 3 miles, we're halfway across Molokai Bay, 3 miles, maybe 4 miles, in a helicopter, which is a big deal, you know, in Molokai. They're following you. We get to Black Point, just as we're going on Black Point, the helicopter leads us, right? Then you got this crew from Chicago, downriver paddlers, coming in, they won the race. They beat us in on that, and it's just so, and what we learned from that is, of course, then we got our T-tops. That's where we got the T-tops from, you know.
I thought Billy Whitford brought the T-tops.
No, Billy copied.
He'll tell you all about how he brought
Billy
the
didn't bring the
T-top
T-top.
to
I
Hawaii.
can tell you that. No, but my point there is you look at that, and you're always looking for the edge, and the paddles in the old days didn't make sense, right? They're like trees. You see everybody, that Hawaii 5-0 thing everybody's doing here, but the basic technique with the paddle was the same. You just didn't have the ability to do this, you know, to drive it. It was just hard. You were doing it this way. And the blade was just like a pizza blade. It's wide, and you couldn't get depth. So they've really refined the paddles to do that. But over the years, Avrel's made his years ago with the carbon. Carbon, sometimes if you race in, like in Australia, it was really difficult. He sponsored us one year, and the paddle, we were just fighting the paddle the whole time. It was just too buoyant. It just bounced back at you in real rough water. So we moved away from that. But again, it's up to individual preference, because there's so many different paddle makers now that are going through. You have Les making the Makana paddles. Dave Chun was doing his thing. He sold his company right to someone else. But those paddles they're all different paddles. But there was one guy in Hawaii. There were only a few people making paddles for years, and then they went through, and it's a lot of theory and everything. And you know, I don't have any preference. I mean, I use Makana paddles only because I found them comfortable. I find them balanced. I always, you know, it's just like someone driving a car. If they're always comparing it to a certain car, I'm going to get that car first. You know, when they stop comparing it to it, you've got some good paddlers, good paddles being made now. A lot of variation, a lot of choices. So with that, I mean, you just got to get comfortable with your height and how you use it and that type of thing. But yeah, canoe paddling has just been part of my life. I just, like I said, I've always paddled. I paddle as much as I can when I'm at home. I've got a one-man. Oh, I've got a 4-man, a 3-man, 2 V1s. I have one of these. Tiger made one. And I got another one from Tahiti. I've got 4 one-mans, a bunch of stand-ups. You know, my cousins coach one canoe team. My brother coached, 2 brothers coach 2 other canoe teams, and I coach at Kailua. I'm not sure what questions.
What would you say the most recent thing you've learned is? What was the most recent thing that you went, oh, I should try that?
Paddle length.
Ah.
Paddle length for me. I mean, I've always, for me, paddling for the longest time, I'd use, even in a OC1, I'd use a 52, 53, which is long. You know, and what I'd have to do is just, because, you know, for me, I mean, basically for me, middle finger to my thumb, I'm above the paddle, but I had a lot of length on it. But what I was finding is I just wasn't getting as much out of my drive when I'm moving. I couldn't feel my feet well enough. It just felt, so I started dropping my paddle height down. So now when I paddle in an OC1, I use a 50 or 49. I had Les Luke from Makana design it. It's a 49 shaft, but I had to make the blade 2 inches longer. And so I get deeper water on it, but at least I've got a good drive in it. And then when I get into the OC6, I just go up an inch, and then it's it. But I can feel my feet. You see me? This is I think I sleep and I dream about this stuff, but it's just like everything is repetition, you know. But repetition with proper technique is what you want to do all the time. And I know I'm speaking to the group over here because too often people can just reinforce bad habits. And so if you've got your coach is really focusing on technique, I always tell my crews, you know, technique is your friend. You know, and it's just like anything. You folks have been doing racing before. You want that lowest part of your training to be the base that you collapse to. When you get tired, you want to be in control. You want to be in control. You got to have proper technique. You got to be able to apply pressure properly. You know, and so it's really to focus on technique. You can never do too much technique work. You know, if I've got because you know with workouts and everything, as you folks know from your training and different things, you can get a lot of the workouts that I used to have Karel Tresnak's dad do a lot of our workouts for us, and I can get a lot of a workout in a half an hour. And even on like K1 training, some of our most intense training was a 25-minute workout with very short interval periods, but with heavy emphasis on technique and things. So, but I always tell people that your technique training is the most critical thing you can do. You got that, and then you get yourself in shape. You can have people that are just in terrific shape, but don't paddle well. And you know, and so it's just like it seems like common sense, but I think never be hasty to try and go fast in a canoe. I always tell people to learn how to paddle slow to go fast. There's a term we use in Hawaii, maximum easy. You know, and if you ever jump on an erg, a paddling machine, and you go ahead and watch what you do. If your catch isn't there on the erg, you know, you're not gonna have any speed. So yeah, I know they had those competitions before that were going on, but I would train on the erg often. Well, when I was paddling with Tony folks, because your water here was so flat, I would train in flat water, but I'd spend 15 miles, 20 miles on an erg. And I just watched, you know, people tell you that sound, but it was just repetition. But I was able to go ahead and really focus on my catch because that meter would tell you, you know. I always say paddle slow to go fast. You can always, you bringing your boat speed up together is in an efficient way. and everybody being able to apply at the same time. As you folks know, the boat just goes extremely fast. So nothing better than pulling up next to a crew that's going twice your stroke count and just smile, you know, in this battle. And when you watch the like some of the better Tahitian crews when they paddle, when they're moving at top speed, very little body. It's not moving here. It's just very smooth, you know. But the time in the water is intense, and it's not that long, right? But it's just, and so, like I said, I've never paddled dragon boats, but you folks know that I've paddled dragon boats. The intensity is there. I would love to jump in a boat one day, but I've never been able to paddle a dragon boat. My whole life has been on surf skis, K1s, and the V1. V1s. My initial canoe that I had was not. It was made of tin. When I was 5 years old, we just got a piece of tin, bend it up on its side, and put 2x4s on the end. We had these Hawaiian bushes, these how bushes that made terrific outriggers, amas, and yakus. We put those things on, and 5 years old, we were out there, no rudder on it. So that's how I learned how to steer. So we went to the farthest islands out there, no hesitancy, you know, to paddle. So when the V1 came out, it was like a Cadillac, you know, and this thing. So a lot of our folks that have been steering for a while, that's how we all learned on. So it wasn't a big deal to jump on these things. But they've become so much more precision when you try and go out to sea. But again, you're constantly learning, and the steering blades have changed a lot. And steering is a whole other discussion, you know, about how to properly steer a canoe, how to use the wind and all that other stuff. But know your crew and things.
Uncle, I got a question for you. In your experience in paddling, hopefully I can articulate this well. Was there ever a time where you and your crew came together, like everybody's priorities, or you guys made a decision to really put the work in to be successful and bear fruits? Did that happen organically, or was it something you guys worked towards building?
No, I think, you know, you've got within each crew, or you're gonna have, or within groups, right? You're gonna have groups of people that are just motivated, right? They're gonna show up. They're gonna show up when it's, I'm sure, winter months over here can get. It was cold enough for me over here. I was wearing my thick jacket over here. You folks probably would have been walking out here the days and just a tank top on there cruising around. I'm freezing. But it's on those difficult days. Who shows up, right? Who shows up on a hard day? You know, and my thing with the women and my men in Hawaii is, as long as there's no lightning, we're training. You know, lightning spooks us when you get zapped by that thing, you know, when it hits out there. But other than lightning, and I always used to tell my crews, if Molokai were to happen today, we'd be racing, right? So there's no real excuse for not coming to practice, and because practice is it. But you know, it's just that part of it. You get that, and like even when Ty was calling me early in the year about what I look for people who shows up. You know, who shows up, and because once someone shows up, you can go ahead and train them. You know they're part way there, and then looking for ways to really not be the weak link in the crew. So like for me, just constantly, what do I need to do to make sure that I can, like in the big deal, like in Molokai, can I steer the entire race, but be effective doing it? So my Molokai training would start the day after Molokai. That's why I run marathons. I do a lot of endurance stuff, just to go through. I do long OC1 runs, just to get my body used to the sitting in the boat and paddling and it's not just to survive, it's just to be alert and to be effective, right? So you learn to condition yourself through the food that I'm eating, what I eat. I'm on a plant-based diet, so I don't eat meat and stuff like that. But what I found with that is just gives me unbelievable endurance. You know, my recovery period I don't get injured. And it's just, but again, just the training regimen. But each individual knows their body better than everybody else. You know, but if the work starts with the individual, and then trying to surround yourself with people that way, but that's the group would come together, and then also recognizing that everybody in the crew is trying to put their best effort forward. You know, that's the mindset. And so even like when Ty's dad was really close to two of the guys that paddled with me for a long time. We played football together, but when school's over, we ran in different circles. So years went by. I was racing with Tony and them. My work was taking me to a number of different places, and I remember going to a Molokai race, and I was helping Wally and Paul, who are two dynamites. I mean, they're about this tall, but they paddle like this. I mean, they're just fearless and very effective. And they said, "Come on, when are you going to come paddle with us? You know, come be paddling over there." I was racing with you guys. I said, "Oh, okay, my schedule's good." And I went back. But the neat thing, these guys were not the biggest guys in the world, but their heart was huge. And I knew their training regimen from growing up with them, unbelievable. So the element was there already. Okay, these guys are into it. Now we just I took them to Australia with me, threw them in a seat. You know, you look for different skill sets. Does somebody paddle well? Are they even? Trying to find my strokers and different things. And he said, well, who's stroking us? I said, he is. He's never stroked before. Watch. You know, that's when I put Paul. That's how Paul became a stroker. Threw him in there, and he's been stroking ever since. But his training regimen was just off the chart. So those guys, I've got to tell them, hey, I perfectly set up practices. I cancel practices. Or I do these fun practices with them. A lot of the workouts you call for that, so I'd have them, what are you going to do today? And they come down all jazzed up to go. You know, but what I was finding over the year, if I don't plan appropriately and really let people know this is what I'm doing, we're going to be doing sprints at this duration, this intensity level, just lay it out for them this time of the year, they're going to burn out. Like my close friend Wally, this other guy that just trains crazy, too much, you know. So by the time we get into our season, our racing season, he is cranky. Nobody wants him around. He's grumbling about everything, you know. But it's not because he doesn't like paddling. He's burnt out, you know. And so when I start changing the practices, just, okay, gang, this is a lolly practice. No, I don't tell them that. But they know we don't do anything hard. Or I cancel practices and training properly. But that's, you know, recognizing that you're going to have those things happen in crews and recognize that coming to practice is a release for everybody. Everybody's got their stuff going on at home and with their workplace and everything. When you come down to paddling, it's paddling, you know. And but that comes from within a group, and then you start finding those folks that show up on the crazy days, that do the extra things that matter on land. You know, who's there to go work on the canoes? You know, who's there taking care of the canoes? Who's concerned about the canoes? Who's concerned about everybody's got paddles? It's all those things that go into making a good team. I mean, I paddled with Greg Barton. I did Catalina with him, and those guys I met just through kayaking, K1 paddling, and I just called them up one day, let's go make a crew. Catalina, or in Australia, bunch of guys down there, the two Kinney brothers, this guy Trevor Henley, who was their triathlete guy the night before. They had a sprint. I had Mark Haynes, Steve Cole, and I said, let's go do the sprint. So I had the two Kinneys, Trevor, Mark Haynes, Steve Cole was in 5, and we did that sprint. Whoa, you know. But the neat thing is, you got everybody that can come from so many different places. Even my experience of going with Tony folks, I'd never paddled with them ever. Remember, I showed up in Molokai, I jumped in a boat, and one of the gentlemen, Mike was still alive then. Mike Shea was in there, and Mike was in 3. And I'd never paddled with these guys going in there. Okay, watch, jump in. Okay, you know. But my point to that is, paddling can be universal because of technique, right? And because of technique and understanding the mechanics of pressure and how to paddle, you can adapt and you can modify. There can be some nuances with the different strokers and what they do, but the people behind you, a good number 2 person can match up properly, but you're constantly looking for how to blend in and apply pressure. But the paddlers have paid attention to technique. It's an easy transition. You know, if I paddle with people that don't even speak English, you know, or I don't speak their language, I should say, when I was with the Tahitians, but you understand when they want to go, you know. But the paddling piece was easy to do. A lot of their coaches now, I raced with them. This guy, Phil Bernardino, like Gerard, I've been known for a long time, that whole group, but we all get together and we just share stories, you know, about things. But the ability to jump from your group, I'm sure if you folks ever came to Kailua, you're welcome to come paddle with us. We'll get you in a canoe. The guys will love you and ladies will love you. If you got ladies coming over, and we'll learn from you. You know, we're going to learn because you're probably going to do the same thing that I would do if I jumped in a canoe here. Try and paddle my rear end off, you know, so I don't make Ty look bad, you know, so. But you know how that is. And so when you talk about building a crew, it's that. How do I contribute to the crew? Am I doing what I need to do, you know? And when the boats start going ugly, which they will, you know, technique's your friend. You got to back off and back up and say, is it me? And if it feels ugly, that's what it's going to feel like that day. But you get out of the canoe knowing that everybody in the boat is putting their best effort forward at that moment. And that's what builds crews, you know. So my crew, you know, I've been paddling masters now for a number of years since Tony and them, and my guys are so competitive with the open guys now, but it's just because of the training. So you have folks that have been at the top of the world for a brief moment, and then they started loving themselves, right? Then they show up, they realize they're no longer on top of the world, you know? You're a name. You're a name and a point in time. It's irrelevant when you get in the water, you know? So it's just that constant looking for ways to improve yourself and not taking anything for granted as you go. But it's building crews is something really special, you know? But again, it's those little things that I look out. I don't worry about the canoe, the paddling of the canoe. If the stuff on land is cared for, you know, attention's paid to that, the canoe paddling is going to be easy. Because the hard parts are those things. everybody's tired, you got out of the boat, I got to go somewhere. Planning for practice, for example. And I know I'm taking up your practice time, but planning for practice, knowing that you plan so that you're there for your crew. So you're not coming into the boat and then you got to rush off. You come late, you rush off, you got to go home. Every club has that stuff. And if you want to see crews get fall apart quickly, it's those little things. Or someone in the crew thinks that they can steer. My remedy with that is real quick. When I hear that, stop the boat, you get in the back and steer. Life changes quickly, right? Never happens again, you know. And then if that happens too much, I said just stay out of the boat. Just stay out, you know, because you just don't want that. You want positive discussion. And Ty knows in our canoes it's quiet. My boat is really quiet, you know, and that's it. Everybody just paddles. The simplest thing would say, okay, you guys ready? Let's go. We're going. You push. Okay, we got to push now.
You've already said everything.
What's that?
It's because you've already said everything. You've been together like 30 years.
No,
Jeez. What else you got to talk about?
We have new people that come in every so often. And you know the neat thing about when a new person, we had a friend, this guy come in from New Zealand. You know, we met him in Australia at a Hamilton Cup. He ended up marrying a woman from Kailua, and he came in. Okay. And
So I know you need to wrap, but technique, priority, fitness, priority. And so with that, you have the ability to adapt when you get it. When you go to New Zealand and you get in a boat with a crew you've never been with, you have to have the ability to adapt to what they're doing. So your technique isn't written in stone. It's just you understand the fundamentals enough that you can adapt. If your boat's off, you've got to adapt to what's happening.
And you know, Suzanne's talking about the boat being off. It's just like you folks can feel when you get in the boat if things jerking, right? The experienced paddler will say to check themselves. Okay, what am I doing? And especially if you've got a stroker up front, right? The stroker's stroking. So regardless, you can think the stroker's doing a terrible job. It doesn't matter. You got to match up with that stroker, right? So you constantly, those are the types of things when I talk about the technique part of it, and recognizing they might not be reaching, their hand might be too low on the blade, you know, they might not be finishing their stroke, they might not be bearing their blade on the entry, but you've got to you've got to help him or her paddle into that range or that level that you want them to. So how do you do that? By applying pressure properly, give them boat speed. You can help that stroker get back in sync, or if you have somebody in 2 or 3 that's off, it's just constantly trying to see what you need to do to help that boat move forward. And if everybody in the boat's thinking that way, the steerer in the back doesn't have to do much talking. If timing's off, they'll catch it. The individual will catch it, or somebody in the boat will, hey, a little fast, and then that's it. But it's not a constant repetition of improving, but you're constantly looking for what do I need to do to get the boat smooth, right? Am I matching with the stroker? So being self-critical constantly is important. So yeah. I don't want to take all your time.
Does anybody have any questions?
All right, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, you talked a couple times about the power, you know, after, I guess, the catch. Could you just explain what a good power stroke is and what is too much, or, you know?
No, I think if you just look at a stroke, right, you're going to go, basically, it's from here, let me say, to here, to your knee. Let me just think, just from a technique standpoint. Once a paddle, you're starting your paddle at this angle, right? You're going to get to the water. Efficiency in a paddling stroke is you're trying to keep it as perpendicular as possible. The minute it gets here, it's inefficient. It's inefficient already, because what you're going to start doing is pulling your boat down. So if you're here, and what I always tell people, I always tell people that my bottom hand's in front of my top, like this, right? So I can always feel my feet. I sit here. Some people like to sit this way. I don't. I sit here. I'm this way. I'm here. But my top hand is here. It's my shoulder. I'm like this. My bottom hand's in front. Can we borrow that, Tony? So if I'm looking at the stroke, and this is the side of the boat here. I'm here. This is my paddle. But what I coach my crew's middle finger to your thumb. I'm here. And what does this bottom hand do? All the bottom hand does during a stroke is drives the paddle down. My bottom arm is, I'm not doing this. I'm not pulling with this. This isn't pulling. What's causing me, I'm planting my paddle here. So I always tell people, bottom hand in front of the top. I'm here, I got my shoulder, I'm here. My head's in the center, I'm up. And all I'm gonna do with this bottom arm just allows me to drive. I drive, I place my paddle here, and I'm trying to pull myself forward constantly. So this paddle here is, once it gets less than perpendicular this way, you got to try and get it out of the water. Not that you're going to get it back here, it's just a natural flow, right? So even if you look at this, it's just balanced, but it's just here. Drive. So the stroke is really, the power part of the stroke is really short. I mean, it's here to about mid-thigh, and the pedal's going to come out already. And depends on how you folks are being taught, but it's here when we're returning. You want to try and keep this tight here and just bring it back here. It's not dropping. Like we have a club going now. In the early years, they were going to Tahiti to train, and their thing was here, like this. A lot of wasted motion. They've since changed, but it's just, you know, drive here. But even as I'm explaining it to you, I can feel my toes when I'm paddling. So my legs are, why running is so important for me is just that. This is my strength, this part here. But you're not going to see a lot of movement this way, right? Because your body, everything's connected to your feet. So if I'm sitting here, if you ever paddle with me, you're going to see very little body motion for me. I mean, this way. Everything's going to be here. I drive here, back here. I use this as a guide. I get here, that's it. Come back in, it's comfortable. If I want to add pressure, I can pedal slow. If I want to add pressure, it's just right here in front. I'll just drive it harder. So this part here, this arm, this is what it's doing. I can feel it here, 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 down to my feet. This is all this arm does. So this arm is driving here. My bottom arm's like an oarlock, holding it in place. Don't get me wrong. This is tight right now. But I'm holding it here, I'm driving here, and I'm trying to pull my body up this way. Once you start, you folks have heard about it, you put your paddle in the water, you want it to be quiet. So what I tell myself in my head all the time is quiet entry, drive. Every stroke is quiet entry, drive. So I'm coming here, boom, I'm driving my paddle down, but it's quiet entry. I don't want to hear any noise. I don't want to hear any suction. You folks have all heard about cavitation, so you hear any suction, it sounds impressive, but it's useless. Because you got air between your paddle and the water. So you hear that, and your boat's not going anywhere. You know, so what you'll find too is when I'm paddling here with my entry, my hand gets wet every single time. So when I'm paddling with my women or the guys, and if I'm coaching, I coach my OC1s, and I'll tell them, get your hands wet. But I want you to get your hand wet here, not here. So too often stroke people start high, and then they'll drive down. Right, I'm going to get my deepest stroke is going to be here. That's where my paddle is going to be at its deepest point. It's going to pull my boat forward. It's going to basically pull me to the paddle. So that's where the speed, that's what happens with the stroke. I mean, that's how we think about it. But even on K1 training, when we're training, same thing that we were taught there. It's like a spear. You're here. And basically, I'm trying to pull my hip up to the paddle. Same thing here. I'm trying to pull myself up to the paddle. I'm not trying to pull the paddle back. So too often you'll see this, you know. You're gonna get tired. You just get tired. So that's often you get next to people that are really efficient at it. Oh, it looks so easy. You make it look so easy. That person's working hard. But they're working hard from here to here. Not from here all the way back here. Okay. So everything's gotta be, your power is gonna, once you get to your knee, for example, you're here, it's going to start doing this naturally. So once you get like this, you're at a point of inefficiency. And you don't want to, right here, you're really comfortable because you can stand here and just grind. But the minute you do that, your boat just sinks. You know, so you're pulling yourself down to the water rather than causing it to release. So. Anything? Anybody? Oh.
Can you demonstrate your switch for us?
Oh. You do it so much you don't think about it. Yeah. Just here, come up. Just here, yeah, that's it. But even for the cruise show, I'm telling you to pick your points, right? Pick your marks and always go for those marks. Just be disciplined enough. That's it. Okay. But you get here already with my gauge is I'm watching this hand. I've been doing it so long so I don't watch it anymore, but I can tell if I get too low, my paddle's gonna go back, and not only that, the ocean's gonna remind me. Not only will it go back, it's gonna take it. It's just here and come right back here. And if you want to pick your stroke up, you can just do it. But it's all here to here. Not here like this. You know, so, like I said with Tony, when I jumped in with that crew, it was easy for me to jump in with them because of technique. You know, and having never paddled with them. The Australian guys, same thing. New Zealand, same thing. Tahitians, same. So everybody's got their different names for strokes, like the huti and all that other stuff. But basic entry is the same. Technique is just tough, strong technique. So, yeah.
Uncle, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe if we get back here for Catalina, then we can follow you folks across the Catalina.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Other way around.
No. It'd be pretty exciting.
So
I-
Uncle was being super modest. If you guys have heard of Johnny Puakea, boat builders like Kai Va'a, Kai Bartlett, Luke Evanson, like he's coached all these guys. He's been a mentor for a lot of these guys when they were kids. So it's had a tremendous impact on the paddling community and the state of Hawaii, and we're honored to have you here.
A lot of short story on Kai Bartlett. Kai Bartlett was like 16, so in those days, the men's Molokai, there were a group of paddlers that would start off an hour before, and they do the channel. The canoe paddlers would go, Gary Yun and those guys. So Kai tells me, Uncle, I want to go. I said, go. So the guys tell me, he's not going to make it. I said, he's going to be on the beach, showered and changed. This is when he was 16. By the time you guys even get in, sure enough, Kai was gone, Kai was in with the canoes, way up with the canoes. But and Kai's just trained hard, to go through. Luke's just been really special. Luke does a lot of stuff in the community. He's a council person over in Kauai, but they do a lot of community things, and that's part of a crew. It's adopt, play, just get involved in your community. The paddling allows that part of it, and yeah, Johnny's just been good with John's dad. Just been special for everybody up there. But yeah, it's just a lot of good people that we've been, and even here too. You got Josh has been around for a long time. These folks have been around for a while. They've influenced paddling. Just like how Ty might talk about me, we talk about these folks that cruise in California that come over to race all the time because they're part of the whole canoe history. Like you guys are going to be for me now. I can go back and boast that I know where you were at. But
Found us geographically.
no, you guys are really impressive. It was neat watching you race the other day, at least out here. If I had a one man, I would have jumped on and went on far. I didn't ask
We
Ty
got
on
one
purpose
for you.
because my wife would have shot me. Yeah.
I was going to say, we had one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys and appreciate the opportunity to come spend time with you. But if you're ever over in Hawaii, just get my contact information from Kai. We train right across from Buzz's Steakhouse. Got about 30 canoes over there, and I've always got access to extra. I have other OC1s and things. Welcome to jump in.
Their one-man practice is amazing. It's like a fleet of pueos. I'm talking, and Uncle Kamoa and his crew, they put a hurting on me on one mix. I mean, an absolute clinic. So
That's fun though. But you guys are welcome. Have a good practice.
right
I
on.
envy you. You get to go in the canoes today. I'm gonna sit here and watch.
Thank you.
So are people on vacation? Do you have a kid on, like your grandkids right here?
Yeah, they came
That
over.
live right here?
I have grandkids that live right in near Balboa Park.
Yeah, okay.
I
So
bought a
they're
place. No, I rented a house.
Can you get everybody in lines real quick? Break off into something like that. Get everybody on the water. I saw a couple of stragglers coming. Take care, Clark.